the financial means to spread misery and death around the world. Businesses and banks around the world now have a clearer duty to ensure that companies with which they conduct financial transactions are not connected to the IRGC in any material way. It also gives the U.S. government additional tools to counter Iranian-backed terrorism. This designation is a direct response to an outlaw regime and should surprise no one. And it builds on the more than 970 Iranian individuals and entities that the Trump administration has already sanctioned. For 40 years, the Islamic Republic's Revolutionary Guard Corps has actively engaged in terrorism and created, supported, and directed other terrorist groups. The IRGC masquerades as a legitimate military organization, but none of us should be fooled. It regularly violates the laws of armed conflict. It plans, organizes, and executes terror campaigns all around the world. From the moment it was founded, the IRGC's mandate was to defend and export the regime's revolution by whatever means possible. The IRGC institutionalized terrorism shortly after its inception, directing horrific attacks against the Marine barracks in Beirut in 1983 and the U.S. Embassy Annex in 1984, alongside the terror group it midwifed, Lebanese Hezbollah. Its operatives have worked to destabilize the Middle East from Iraq to Lebanon to Syria and to Yemen. With this designation, the Trump administration is simply recognizing a basic reality. The IRGC will take its rightful place on the same list as terror groups it supports: Lebanese Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Hamas, Kataib Hezbollah, among others, all of which are already designated as foreign terrorist organizations. The long list of IRGC-backed terror incidents is ample justification for today's decision. I want to just give you a handful of examples. Last September, a federal court in the United States found Iran and the IRGC responsible for the 1996 Khobar Towers bombing, which killed 19 American service members. In 2011, the United States foiled an IRGC Quds Force plus right here in Washington, D.C., to bomb a restaurant. The attempt was to kill the Saudi ambassador to the United States of America. Outside of the United States, the IRGC's terror campaign is just as active. In 2012, 4 Quds Force operatives were apprehended after plotting to attack Israeli targets in Turkey. In that same year, 2 other Quds Force operatives were arrested in Kenya for planning a bomb attack, while the Quds Force also directed a bomb attack that targeted Israeli diplomats. And as recently as January 2018, German authorities uncovered 10 suspected Quds Force operatives active in their country. The IRGC supports Palestinian terror groups that target innocent civilians, and it helped create U.S.-designated terror groups both in Lebanon and in Iraq. And the IRGC also backs the murderous Assad regime, which gasses and slaughters its own people. Our designation makes clear to the world that the Iranian regime not only supports terrorist groups, but engages in terrorism itself. This designation also brings unprecedented pressure on figures who lead the regime's terror campaign. Individuals like Qasem Soleimani. He's the commander of the Quds Force and oversees Iran's forces deployed to advance the Islamic Revolution through terrorism and other forms of violence. He doles out the regime's profits to terrorist groups across the region and around the world. The blood of the 603 American soldiers the Iranian regime has found to have killed in Iraq is on his hands and on the hands of the IRGC more broadly. Inexplicably, the regime has faced no accountability from the international community for those deaths. Far from being an arbitrary attack on Iran, our pressure campaign imposes just and long overdue consequences for the regime's malign activity. We should not also forget the IRGC's central role in the nationwide con artistry and corruption of the regime's leaders, which they perpetrate against the regime's own people. Other governments and the private sector will now see more clearly how deeply the IRGC has enmeshed itself in the Iranian economy through both licit and illicit means. In just this past July, the City Council of Tehran announced that the IRGC Cooperative Foundation, which manages the IRGC's investments, has embezzled more than $1 billion from the city of Tehran. The next month, a former councilman accused the longtime mayor of Tehran of steering contracts to the IRGC. It's no coincidence that the mayor also formerly served as an IRGC commander and the chief of Iran's police state. Back in 2017, Tehran arrested several IRGC commanders involved with the Cooperative Fund for Corruption, including the IRGC's financial architect, Masoud Merdadi. Then there's Mahmoud Ahmadinejad's old college pal, Sadiq Musili. They call him the billionaire general. He went from being a low-level IRGC officer to one of Iran's richest men, all thanks to scoring construction and oil contracts from companies linked to the IRGC. The leaders of Iran are racketeers, not revolutionaries. The Iranian people deserve better than to be governed by this cadre of hypocritical and corrupt officials. They are opportunists. And on a final note, the IRGC is also responsible for wrongly detaining U.S. persons, several of whom remain in captivity in Iran. The American people should know that we are working diligently to bring each of those individuals home. With this designation, we are sending a clear signal, a clear message to Iran's leaders, including Qasem Soleimani and his band of thugs, that the United States is bringing all pressure to bear to stop the regime's outlaw behavior. We ask that our allies and partners around the world do the same. Thank you.